Oh, hello. My name is Mara, and welcome to Books Like Whoa. So, somehow, the first 3 months of the year have officially gone by. What is life? Where is time? It is just like sand through the hourglass. So are the days of our lives. So anyway, at the end of every 3 months, I always like to kind of check in with you guys on how my reading's going and kind of talk about what my favorites so far have been. Now, as I was looking through, I've realized that I've had a good reading year in terms of I've not read much of anything that was terrible. But I've also not had a ton of like truly very high highs. I've had a lot of like 3 to 4 stars. So I've only had, I think, 3 4.5 stars, which on my scale means a favorite of the year, and 1 5-star, which means an all-time favorite. So I'm going to talk to you guys about those 4 books, and then I'm also going to tell you about the 2 4-star books that, if I'm still thinking about them, could get bumped up to a 4.5 because I think they're probably my favorites of that tier of book. So without further ado, let's start at the bottom and work our way up to the top. So the first book of the 4-star ones that I think could sneak up into a 4.5 by the end of the year, the first one is The Wolf and the Whale by Jordanna Max Brodsky, and I thought that this was really good. It was unique to my personal reading of fantasy in that it was an Inuit and Viking-based kind of lore system. I really liked that the main character is gender ambiguous or like kind of non-binary. She uses, ultimately it's she, her pronouns, but her people believe that her father's spirit inhabits her, so she's raised as a boy, but she has a physically female body. So that's really interesting, I think. And then having the Inuit and Viking elements as sort of the base of the fantasy, I really liked. And then it's also kind of like a romance, so I'm always a sucker for that. So between all of that, I really liked it. The reason it was a 4-star was that the pacing is weird. Like it takes a long time to get going, and then it feels like the end is really drawn out. So I don't think it's a perfect book, but it is one that I personally really enjoyed. So yeah, we'll see how I'm feeling about that one at the end of the year. And then Say You're Sorry, which I've talked about quite a bit on this channel. So again, I'm not going to get into too much detail on this other than to say this is like pretty much exactly what I want from like a suspense type book and a romantic suspense in particular. Like this is technically a romance, but that's not overwhelming the plot, which is something I would like in my suspense books. I like them to be more suspense than romance, but I do like that element. I really like the serial killer bits of this. I really like the overall kind of like arc that's being set up where there's going to be different stories related to a cult that they're trying to take down. Yeah, I just really like this, and it really hit the spot for me in terms of genre fiction. Okay, and so then moving into the 4.5 stars, the first one is Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Doughty, and I really enjoyed this. So some of this was that this hit me at the right time because I happened to be listening to this audiobook right at the 6-month mark of my father's death, and this is a memoir of a woman here on YouTube. She's called Ask a Mortician, who is a mortician, and she is detailing kind of the early years of her being in the funeral industry and kind of how she came to be interested in that career and sort of how what it means evolves for her over time. And it was just a really wonderful blend of like personal memoir. Like I think she does a great job of selecting parts of her own life to weave into the story that she's telling. And I think she has really meaningful insights into her own life and experience. So that was really great. And then it also is just really interesting in terms of you learn a lot about how the funeral industry works, at least here in the US, because it definitely varies country to country. But I've just really enjoyed it. It was informative. I learned things from it, but it also really, I found it very moving. It was a very moving personal memoir that also had a lot of great kind of information in it. So all around, just like a really great book that it's been very hyped. I'm not surprised I loved it, but I really did love it, and I gave it a 4.5. Okay, and then we have Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. So this is giving me like not all the feels because this isn't as funny and I think it's not as magical-y as the Kate Daniels series, but it's in that same vein and it's kind of like filling that place in my heart now that that series has ended, even though there's going to be spinoffs and whatnot. So Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse is a Own Voices Native American based magic post-apocalyptic urban fantasy any of that makes sense. Basically, like there's been essentially a natural disaster related, I think we were meant to surmise, to global warming. And there is a Navajo reservation where our main character lives. And on this reservation, like the Navajo gods have come back to life or like are reanimated, and she is like basically a demon slayer. So it's got like all of that kind of, it's got that kind of a plot going. I really like the main character in this. I like that she's not your typical kick-ass heroine. She's, I think, a little bit different. I like that she's not as cocksure in some ways. We enter the story at an interesting moment in her own personal life. There's clearly going to be kind of like a slow burn romance coming up in this thing. And I think that will be good. I like kind of the pieces that have been set in place for that. I just think that this is really, really good. And yeah, I'm so excited to continue in the series. The next one comes out at the end of April. It's called Storm of Locusts. And based on the ending of the first one, I'm really excited to see where things go. So this is just like super good. Definitely would recommend. And then my last 4-star book is Bad Blood by John Carreyrou, Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup. So the story of Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes, has been just like everywhere the last 6 months. And I think it really, in a lot of ways, kicked off with this book. And I can tell you, having consumed this book, the podcast called The Dropout, and the documentary called The Inventor, of the properties about Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes, I do think this is the best one. So John Carreyrou is the reporter who really broke open the story, which was essentially like large-scale fraud in the medical technology field, having to do with blood testing, and just like a bonkers story that you would sound far-fetched if it had been a fiction, like a business thriller thing. Like it would have sounded too far-fetched, but like, bitch, this really happened. It's a truly wild story, which is why I think it sort of captured the public's imagination so much. But it's a really important story, I think, because it tells you a lot about sort of like the current business landscape. You know, I'm somebody who's in business and I work in technology. And so I think I probably am primed to be really interested by this type of a story just because I can relate to it in certain ways. But I do just think overall, like if you're looking for narrative nonfiction that like is really interesting, compelling, reads like a novel, this is definitely it. I do wish, so the back half of this book has a lot of the reporter coming into the story and getting the story, and I am such a sucker for that I feel like the kind of balance and pacing between the first and second parts in that respect is a little off for me, which I think is what keeps it from being a 5-star. But that being said, 4.5, I really love this and would definitely recommend it. I've only really encountered a couple of people who didn't love it, so really good nonfiction. And then we move on to the one and only 5-star book on this list, and that is All Systems Red by Martha Wells. So surprising no one, because this book has been so hyped, and I say book, it's like right on the cusp between a novella and a short novel, but let's call it a novella. But this is a sci-fi novella that has gotten so much love in the last couple of years. And after I read it, I 100% understood why, because this book epitomizes how novellas work. Like if you are a writer and you want something to like dissect the structure of, to understand how to write a novella or how to write like a concise, very focused novel, this is a top candidate I would point you to, because it just gets how to make a story in a few amount of pages work in terms of the world building. So it's set in space in sort of like a speculative kind of like archaeological dig type thing, or like mining deal with a bunch of scientists. So it just paints the world that you're in terms of like who these scientists are. Our main character is a bio AI robot type thing who refers to itself as Murderbot. And Murderbot is my heart. I love Murderbot so much, just for so many reasons. And it's short, so I don't want to spoil it too much. But basically, this has almost everything I love in it, because it's a mystery plot with, it's sci-fi, but like some sort of fantastical or like not our world element as the setting, and just like super compelling characters. It also manages to pack a pretty big punch in terms of the themes it's dealing with. So like, I'm impressed with it on kind of a thematic level, on a writing level, on a character, like this book works, and I loved it, and I'm looking forward to reading more. I suspect that none of them will ever fully live up to the joy that was this first read, but that being said, just super good. And I would definitely say that it was my favorite thing I read so far this year. So yeah, those are my top picks for Q1 2019. Like I said, I wish that I had more on this list of things that I just absolutely loved and thought were just excellent and but you know, the upside is I haven't had a lot of like super low lows. So I guess I'll just take that and be glad that, you know, I've had more highs than lows, even if I haven't had as many highs as I would have liked. But anyway, I think that will do it for this video. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below. And I think that will do it. I hope you're having a really lovely day, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye.